Today I'm going to talk about separation anxiety. It is a widely discussed subject, and for some people they choose to ignore it, whereas other people do acknowledge that it exists and it might be a problem in their horse. Separation anxiety is, per my definition, the lack of ability to cope with being alone in the horse. So some horses cope better with it because of their personality, but a lot of horses wouldn't. They would prefer to be in a herd if they could choose. We have to think about the fact that in the wild, if a horse is living wild and free, it would very much stay in a herd environment constantly. They are constant grazers, they live together, they do everything together. And when we as humans take them out of their natural habitat, we expect them to behave in a calm manner even without their herd. So being able to cope with being alone is something that all horses need to learn if they're going to be used for the purposes that we have made up for them. Now, right now, I don't have any material where I can show you typical examples of separation anxiety because all of my horses are very calm and they can deal with being alone. This is something that I haven't directly trained with them, but it's something that I've indirectly have learned by throughout the training that I've conducted with them. Separation anxiety is something that I very much think about because if I don't feel that the horse is feeling safe with being alone, then I don't feel that it's safe to do any other training with it. It's one of my pillars in my training is to teach them to cope with being alone. So what is separation anxiety? How does it present? So for instance, if you're leading a horse and it's constantly looking around and it's neighing for its friends, then you know this is a sign of separation anxiety. Another typical example is if you have stabled horses and one horse is left in the barn where all the others are going out, it might display separation anxiety by wandering around in its stable, neighing and tossing its head and being very distressed in general. A horse may also display separation anxiety, for instance, when you're out hacking. If you're hacking in company and suddenly you have to go separate ways, you try to ride in a different direction with your horse and it's neighing and getting worried. That's also separation anxiety. Another example of separation anxiety can be displayed as a horse who is alone in a paddock and running around searching for friends and searching for company and not settling, just running around in circles and just neighing, looking, screaming for its friends. I'm going to see if I can dig in my archives to find some videos of my horses displaying separation anxiety. As I said, in my training, I very quickly usually get rid of this anxiety because the horses, they learn that they can cope without company from other horses. So why is separation anxiety a problem? It can display as a problem if you're in everything that you do with your horse outside of it being in a herd. So for instance, if you're riding, you won't get the focus that you want out of the horse because it's neighing and looking for friends, especially like if you're schooling in the arena, it's just neighing, it's not focusing on what you're asking it to do. This is a horse that's not learning anything that you want to teach it. If you want to teach it a certain movement or whatever, this horse is distracted, and when they're distracted, it's very difficult to teach them anything. A horse with separation anxiety can also be difficult to handle or dangerous to handle. If you're leading a horse that is not paying attention to you, it might bump into you and not see you because you haven't established a leadership where the horse respects your space. It's just looking for its friends. You might also discover that you have problems with hacking alone, that the horse plants its feet or spins around, doesn't want to leave the yard or leave its home. You might also have problems with trailer loading this horse, or putting it in a horse box because the horse doesn't want to leave the yard and leave the safety of its friends, the comfort of its herd. So how do we address this problem or this issue? The way I do it, the way I see it, is that this is not something that you work on directly, but you work on it indirectly. And by that I mean you do a lot of groundwork where you actually connect with the horse, communicate with the horse, and make it acknowledge your presence, and that you're establishing leadership with this horse. So the thing is, when you make your horse focus on you, you're removing its distractions. I'm going to give you an example here. Say that you're working alone in the arena with your horse, a place where the horse isn't in contact with its herd. When you establish leadership and you're getting your horse to focus on you, it's also at the same time learning to cope with not having other horses around it. It's learning to work and focus on its own, because there's a distinction here. When you're establishing leadership with your horse is learning to cope with being away from other horses and seek comfort in your company. When this happens, your horse is learning to be away from other horses. Obviously, we are a different species, and the horse doesn't see us as a horse, even if they see us as a leader. I think horses are smart enough to know that distinction, or understand that distinction. It isn't as if you don't exist and the horse is completely alone, but the horse is learning to cope without a horse herd. When you do groundwork, you're working on a horse's level. So this is why I recommend doing a lot of groundwork instead of just riding a horse. When you're sitting in the saddle, the horse is not establishing the same contact with you. You're not looking it into its eyes and seeking this connection that you do in the same way as you do on the ground. Now, when I say groundwork, I don't mean lunging a horse in circles with no purpose. I mean moving its feet, asking it to move when you're walking past, asking it to follow you, asking it to move its hind end away from you, asking it to move its front end away from you without having to touch the horse. I mean that you should use body language to communicate with your horse. And this is going to strengthen the bond between you, and also practice. This is practice for the horse to be without other horses, and its confidence level is going to increase. And after maybe a few weeks or months, whatever time it takes for you to establish leadership and a good connection with your horse, the horse is going to calm down and it's going to be able to cope without the presence of other horses. I hope this video has been useful to you. And remember, this is my experience and my understanding of separation anxiety. If you have a different experience or understanding of separation anxiety, that's fine. That's fine. You know, it's up to you to decide what works for you and your horse. But I've found that for all the horses that I worked with, I have never trained on decreasing separation anxiety directly. I've always seen it as an indirect effect of all the training that I do with groundwork. Thank you for watching.